the discussion will be on ITSM. Keep your questions handy, and before we talk about anything, let's do a round of introductions. We would love to know who you are, which company you're working with, and what is it that you're doing there, and one hobby or how otherwise you would want people to remember you. So we start with the Diksha.
Okay, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Diksha Rastagi and I'm currently a product manager with Atlassian, and I look over alerts and notifications in GSM and OpsGD. I've been with Atlassian for like 1.5 years, so fairly new. Before that, I was working with this bank called NatWest or Royal Bank of Scotland, if any of you know. I was a developer there, then moved into business analytics. That's where I was heavily into like agile, working with JSM because they follow that very heavily, and that's when I first got introduced to Jira and I got to know what Atlassian is at that time. Something that I love to do, I love dancing. I used to put on videos, but I think with work so much I stopped doing that. And yeah, I stay in Gurgaon in itself, and Atlassian gives us the opportunity to work remotely, so I'm still here, and yeah, that's something about me.
Wow! So we'll talk more about the dancing part and putting videos out. That's wonderful. We would like to follow her, right?
No. I have enough of my colleagues following me, so don't want more folks there.
Okay. Yeah. So we go down to Chris then.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for the warm introduction to this wonderful Atlassian community. I've been made to feel very welcome. I'm Chris Cook. I've been working for various solution partners, Clear Vision and Adaptivist, and then from that I started my own app, custom charts for Jira, basically because out of the box Jira reporting is quite limited and quite frustrating. And then some of the other options are very powerful, heavyweight business intelligence tools. I'm sure you've used at your banks. But for the average user, they just want something simple and easy to use. So we made custom charts for Jira so that the marketing team can make their own reports in Jira and everyone can benefit from data-driven decisions. Something personal about myself, I've started doing stand-up comedy.
Wow.
What are your topics? See whether I'm funny first.
Yeah, what are the topics that you hit on?
Incredibly offensive. Please don't search me online. Well, I'm sure you're not easily offended, but that's something you already might be. So on a good day, I'm nearly as funny as Sajid. So.
Probably towards the end, we can actually have some of that.
Yeah, sure.
So over to you, Manas.
Hi folks, this is Manas. I work as a product manager with the Jira Service Management team. So my team mostly looks at helping enterprises use JSM, and that covers a bunch of things like security, compliance, being able to move data between server to cloud, cloud to cloud, a bunch of those things. And also kind of like looks at the whole limits that we have in cloud and how can we make them a bit more efficient for people who are moving from server, because every time we keep hearing, right, hey, server does not have this limit, why do you have it in cloud? So we kind of like work on all of those things. Before that I was with a company called Freshworks, which also has a solution called Fresh Service in the ITSM space, so I worked there for about like 3 years. And then apart from the works...
So I think it's much more important to track customer satisfaction. Because time to resolution, I understand why businesses track it, but it cannot be the guiding star, right? It must be a secondary one. Because it's like measuring story points with software development. How big is a piece of string? Some things just take longer to resolve, but if you're asking something, oh, it's in the FAQ, done, versus you're asking something, oh, that's a feature, right? Like, which we love that feedback, thank you. Absolutely. It's going to take us 6 months.
Yeah, right. So before we go on to Manas, I really want to, share key takeaways for me from here. And then once Manas will be done, I would want to hear from you all as well. So we'll come back, to the panel, but let's go back to the audience. So before we go back to the audience and Manas, I think if someone has to build a case, and I think which is the major struggle every time you sell a new product which you see value in, because you were into a certain meter and some amazing people told you, what has worked for them, starting from the Trundle story to, going on here. So you will be able to tell them that this is the cost you will be saving by reducing workforce that is engaged, by also showcasing some of the proven case studies from Atlassian on how much time in general it takes to close a ticket of this or that scenario. It will also provide you reports which will not be manual and automatically generated. It will also tell you different categories of report ranging from leadership, management, teams and individuals. It will also be able to showcase everything on a single dashboard, which means you will not have to run from one team to another asking what they are doing. It will also tell you how you can set privacy, how you can change your distribution list and it's not a long thread of people CC'd in. It can also tell you how you can easily migrate your previous data and report and and then move from one environment to another, how you can keep your clusters separate depending on business unit and yet have similar reports. So I think this sort of case study, if you produce to your leadership or management, and of course the licensing is so straightforward, so it will be very easy for you to sell it to your leadership in case you are thinking. And so now Manas, if we have missed anything and you want to add anything to the top.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I definitely agree with Chris on the part that stuff like MTTR and time to first response, I think we have all been there, right? Where the time to first response is a metric that the team is tracking. So the first response is, thank you, we are looking into it. And that's not what the user is really looking for, right? So customer satisfaction is a key metric that you should be tracking post-deployment for sure. One other thing that I would mention is that I have seen some IT teams track customer satisfaction in like a quarterly/half-yearly survey. That's not how you track it. Ideally you should be tracking it for every ticket and then aggregating it. So that's one of the things that I would definitely want to mention. One of the things that needs to be mentioned before deployment is, and now I have seen some larger deployments do it. I don't know how feasible it might be for like a smaller deployment, but there are softwares out there through which you can analyze your emails, analyze the tickets that you are getting in your current tool for service management, try to categorize them in terms of how many are simple requests of getting help. For example, hey, what's the Wi-Fi password? My VPN is not working, I need it. And then the other category could be software access request. I need access to Microsoft Office, I need access to XYZ. The other category could be critical incidents like my laptop stopped working or blah blah blah. And then assign some sort of a time value for each of these categories. So for example, for a software request, usually an agent takes about 15 minutes to grant it and the user has to wait about 6 hours because probably the agent starts working on the ticket only when it gets assigned to them. So for an employee 6 hours are lost, for an agent 15 minutes are lost, and you can get to like a calculation of sorts that this is the net amount of employee hours, this is the net amount of agent hours that you can save if you deploy this service management tool with these automations in place and with these plugins in place. Again, this takes a lot of effort, but for larger deployments, it's all worth the effort because when the contract values run into millions of dollars, it's all very helpful to get into this level of depth.
Perfect, awesome. So no stone unturned. So now we go to the audience. I want to hear from you. What is it that you can do to further build the case? What is it that they are missing? And then we open to the questions. So if we can pass on the mics and the Inji, that would really help so that audience can then pass on to each other. So we first go to Dheeraj because he didn't volunteer. And then anyone who is not volunteering, Dheeraj just pass on the mic. So he gets the mic. So what is it, Dheeraj, you think is missing, or it's not about missing, there is a lot to share. You think companies struggle with, and that's why they need a smooth ITSM system. We can actually start with problem, and then problem statement would help us in building cases. So if we want to have a smooth ITSM in place, what are the challenges will be addressed that you can promise in your projection?
Okay.
Thank you so much, Deepthi, first off. And I was actually going to raise my hand, but you put me on the spot. Anyways. So, thank you to the panel for sharing your thoughts around this. A quick intro about myself. I am a service management consultant and I'm a ServiceNow architect. So, what I've seen, these days happening is ITSM is like we used to talk about ITSM 10 years back. Like Diksha rightly mentioned, it's like service management using information technology tools. That's pretty much about it. Incident, problem, change. We all know that, right? But I think now we've moved way forward. Now the industry challenge or marketing challenge is not about how do I quickly, address the problem. So to me, MTTR is no longer valid, honestly. I don't care about it because I know my virtual bots are going to take care of it. So it's a matter of nanoseconds, doesn't matter, right?
Why the hell do you do that?
At the point when I was spending my own money to buy it.
Yeah. Awesome. So, see, we all have a certain understanding of ITSM. In fact, a lot of understanding. In India, Delhi NCR is a hub for IT support and operations. Bangalore, on the other hand, is way too much into R&D and a lot of startup ecosystem.
So they make the maths and you guys...
Yeah.
You got it right. So now, but I want to hear from all three of you, what should people take away when they talk about ITSM? What is ITSM? Then we'll come down to the tools. So I want to hear from each one of you. What is ITSM? What should they know about ITSM in general?
I mean, we spoke about the use case, which is a great example. It's just about better service management, using automation, using Atlassian intelligence or AI in general to help sort of make those manual routine jobs of like routing those tickets, even having tickets in place to track your problems or your incidents rather than following up on email or tracking the people to respond to it. So just better management in organizations, even internally as well as externally for orgs that deal with external customers. So it's just better management, according to me, using the wide variety of tools and technologies that are there in the market.
I mean, I think I need ITSM for my life. I find often, I talk to different people in different places, sometimes WhatsApp, sometimes Telegram, sometimes Slack, sometimes email. It always gets lost and it's always chaos. And then I remember that there are still big companies out there that are running how I run my chaotic life. so there's a massive need. And you can see, Sony's a huge billion-dollar company dealing with massive projects. Think of how much work it takes to organize a Taylor Swift concert. I wouldn't want to do that by email.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I think Chris and Diksha have more or less covered. I'll probably share my personal experience, right? Because some of the folks here might be just new to ITSM. If you Google ITSM, you would see like a lot of things about, hey, this is this framework called ITIL, and then there's like a new framework that comes out every 3 years, and there's this new practice that one of the organizations are promoting. And all of those are important, and you need to understand them to better understand how ITSM was originally conceptualized and how people thought about the whole experience. But when I was starting out, I thought of it in very simple terms. Somebody needs help, somebody is providing help, you need an organized way to do that. If you don't do it, you will end up with like a chaotic relationship with your emails. You would have like a bunch of different tools plugged together, not acting together, and we will run into issues later down the line. So reports, automations, incidents all come into the picture just because of the simple fact that somebody needs help, somebody is providing that help. You need systems to be able to do that better.
So in conclusion, if you click buy on the Atlassian website for Jira Service Management, solved, you are ITSM, congratulations.
So now I have a question for Manas and Diksha. What tools, plugins does Atlassian provide, when folks who are having conversation in their organization about ITSM and they're like, let's say someone goes from a mid-sized organization and turning into an enterprise. Or someone is a startup and they are growing, and they are growing from say 50, 60 to now 300, 350. And this is the point, as Chris was saying, WhatsApp and emailing and standing here and shouting, don't put that code in the branch, I am still working on it. So when that kind of conversation stops and you really want to manage, what are the tools, that Atlassian provide? And then Chris, I'll come to you for a separate question. What are the tools, that Atlassian provide in general? You don't have to give a complete picture, but roughly like, you use Jira for so and so, and then you can put Confluence. So please, you both can actually chime in and, toss to each other.
Yeah, maybe I can start off, right? Yeah. So Jira is the one that's most popular, and I would assume that everybody knows about it, right? So Jira is basically helping developer teams manage their issue tracking, their productivity, managing bugs, creating agile sprints, all of those fancy stuff, right? So Jira is the popular one. But then I think as soon as the company is getting bigger, you start realizing that if you're using Slack, for example, you cannot just maintain your policy on Slack if you have a leave policy. You cannot have how to fix my Wi-Fi on Slack as a message, right? Yeah. You need a proper documentation tool, and that is where the Confluence comes in. So as you're scaling from 10, 20 people to 50 people, 70 people, you start realizing there is need for documentation, because as new people join in, they have the same questions that people who had joined in before had. So you need tools like documentation for Confluence. So Confluence comes into the picture. And then as you scale from, let's say, 70 to probably 100, what starts happening is that suddenly the person, your IT person who was probably helping you on Slack to fix your VPN, to fix your Wi-Fi, or to fix the fact that you need a new monitor, cannot really happen on Slack, because you have probably 90 people asking just one person to help them, right? That's how companies usually start up, and that's where the service management tools come in, and Jira Service Management comes in. So when you're scaling from like 70 to 100, that's where those tools kind of come in. And then as Jira Service Management comes in, and if you're like an R&D focused startup, you would start realizing that you have a lot more services to take care of. And that is where Compass, which was recently announced for like general availability as well, that tools like Compass, Bamboo start coming in, tools like Bitbucket start coming in, because you need more and more reliability in your software development process. If let's say if a service is having an issue, you cannot just say that, hey, maybe I'll just restart the service. You need to first understand what components in your entire infrastructure are dependent on this service, and what components are going to get affected if you restart the service, right? So to have that service graph, this is where assets, this is where Compass and all of those services products start coming in. I'll leave a few for Diksha to maybe answer that.
You've covered a lot of the Atlassian ecosystem products, but even within these products, there are a lot of integrations with Slack, MS Teams, Zoom, Zapier, Zendesk, and all of these integrations that come in within these tools that can help manage your processes better. Let's say an incident comes up and you want to have all your responders or your on-call folks on a Zoom call. You can make that integration right now in JSM. And the fact that Atlassian tools help integrate with all the other common tools that are used by people is just bundling all these things together and making that whole relationship more tighter. And the fact that they are sort of investing in additional technologies in terms of automation, I think all of these things help make these products stronger and work in line with what is needed and what is working for customers in the market.
Yeah, what do you
I think some of the most important integrations recently have been with assets and Opsgenie. So would you mind talking a bit about that? Because I think that's really important for the bigger customers.
Yeah, so JSM, we I think recently acquired Opsgenie last 4-5 years, and that helps sort of delve into alerting and better event management for companies in this space, so that all of these things are not segregated and they're bundled together, making the whole problem solving easier for organizations. At the same time, assets and other things that are working closely in this space, I would just say that instead of going to multiple different areas, you're now having a single space where people have their data stored. They can manage it by routing those problems to the right set of people and involving workflows in this whole process better.
Yeah. And probably what I would do is continue that metaphor of from like 70 to 100, right? When you from 100 to 250, that is where like stuff like assets comes in, because as an IT team, you want to track your keyboards, you want to track your monitors, mouse, everything. You want to track when the warranty is expiring, you want to track the contracts. All of those things goes into assets, and Ops Genie, I mean, Diksha has covered, right? You want to have control over stuff like on-call and a bunch of other things. So that's where the whole ecosystem starts evolving. But I would also say there's a problem of having the right fit in ITSM. So don't get too far. Like if you're not that big, don't start using all of these technologies. Just make sure you are using it for the right size, and not like kind of like trying to use everything just because GSM offers it.
I see Chris holding himself back.
Was it a mouse joke that we're about to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm prepared.
Oh my God. So, okay, you have worked very closely with Atlassian from outside. And so when it comes to ITSM, what is it that you see, like, in terms of plugins, in terms of, some open softwares, which can go really well when it comes to the ITSM scenario. And then of course, the flowcharts, how do you see them coming in the picture only for the marketing? Or you think inside the management, the team, can they also utilize, reports coming from there? What sort of reports are there, which they use actually?
3 things to unpick there. So, the Atlassian ecosystem is an interesting one. The solution partners are quite important because Atlassian's obviously busy focusing on the product side of things, and every customer is unique, has their own customizations they want to do, and all that high-touch hand-holding that's required, that's what the services solution partner network is there for. In terms of working directly with customers, directly with clients, and then with Atlassian, I find Atlassian are available really intensely only for the biggest of customers, the biggest of clients. For everyone else, probably have to work with a solution partner. Yeah. There's a lot of add-ons out there, and I think it's always a shame when I find some Atlassian customer who doesn't have permission to install any add-ons. They've been told no, vanilla only, right? But I say it's like buying a phone and then being told you're not allowed to install any apps on it. You're going to have quite a limited experience. There is an app for everything, and it's as unique as the number of custom fields in your Jira. It depends what you're wanting to achieve. There are some great apps for people so they can work better on their phone. So people can handle support tickets while on the toilet.
Absolutely.
Or whatever else they're doing with their life.
And it's that kind of job, yeah.
Yeah. In terms of reporting, so as I've said, like out of the box, Atlassian has several limitations. Just the ability to customize things. So if you make a RAG status, what's red, what's amber, what's green, it's kind of strange that Atlassian pie charts are randomized colors every time, and you have to explain to your boss, sorry, but the green bit is actually meant to be red, and it was purple last time, but it changes every time we hit refresh. So that's a simple thing. In terms specifically of ITSM and JSM, if you want to report on multiple different JSM teams, custom charts can definitely help with that, have this single source of truth you're talking about. And I think we've all made a beautiful report of our progress, only for almost no one to see it. And that's very sad. If your success and your failures are a well-kept secret, that's a real shame. So I think the best reports are the ones you can share with someone. And so we've worked very hard on making sure reports are very shareable. There's a data security thing there, so you have to make sure that whatever the privacy level of that instance is, whatever the privacy level of that field is honoured, so that you can't share the wrong information with the wrong people. But yeah, it's really important to be able to share data, and so everyone can benefit from that data-driven decision making. and the democratization of that. Finally, I think something we've done I'm quite proud of is the ability to share data from JSM with customers. So, very often if you can share what you're working on with your customers, that transparency, that visibility, it keeps the conversation going.
Wonderful, got it. So then there comes another important aspect, and I'm sure three of you will have different, angle to look at it and contribute. And this is about ROI. Now I know it's again going to be a long discussion kind of question, but and then as you have been constantly saying, it will also depend on the level of the organization. You don't have to pile up, all sorts of plugins and stuff from marketplace along with Jira and all the Atlassian products. But what is the way, to assess ROI? What are some ways? If someone has to convince their organization that, let's go for Jira for ITSM and let's also bring in few plugins for this and that, how should they go about it? How should they?
I'm checking, apparently they
Okay,
can.
thank you so much. Someone cares. Yeah. So
Should I start?
yeah,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, I think what Manas mentioned correctly, that you should buy everything. You probably don't need to, and it can be a step-by-step process. And we saw in the case study as well, where there are quotes like 1,500 hours saved in a year. Of course, that has some cost assigned to it because it was used in productivity for something else by Sony, and they had to onboard 2 resources. But on top of that, those 2 resources were working on resolving something. So like mean time to resolve. Like there are some KPIs that can be used by companies to sort
What
of.
sort of KPIs? Yeah, that's the like.
MTTR is like one of the most common ones, mean time to resolve. Like when you get an incident, how quickly can you resolve it? Number of tickets that are, maybe change tickets that are created each time a release is done. So people know that they're more, easy and clean with their releases, and it doesn't lead to further problems and in turn impact customers. Because we've seen certain customers of Obscene, for example, that sometimes an on-call engineer did not receive an SMS notification because of some issues, and they weren't able to resolve those incidents in time, which led to a loss, especially for banks or for customers that deal with sensitive data
Yeah, all
or
sorts of field services. Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
So in that case, like MTTR, like KPI becomes very important for them. Things like number of change tickets raised upon a change that is released. So these are some of, for example, right now that I can think of some of the KPIs that companies can track, and it would again depend org to org in terms of what they're using and.
Yeah. So this is comparative post deployment. My point is, so perfect. This is what we will need as soon as we have set up a certain pipeline. But my question is, someone is building a case, right? So what is it that they can do? When they're building a case, okay, fine, this is the platter we should be using, considering the size of company. Let's simply take an enterprise. What should be our key success factors that how should we go about it when we are building a case? We want to sell the product.
Yeah, like we were talking about emails, the number of emails that are exchanged traditionally, and versus how that would be solved when some product or some solution is being used. Number of people that are involved actually in the process who are not needed maybe. Like you don't need 20 people looking in that email chain, everyone is CC'd. You maybe need only 2 people, and those 2 people's time of like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour or whatever. So the number of people who are actually needed in that process, and you're not, wasting another person's time in that whole area. I will let other people speak as well and add on to this.
Yeah, building on what you said, I think ROI is hard. Stuff like the case studies that Trundle have worked on is wonderful because they're so hard to get. If you ask a big customer to write a case study for you these days, often legal or marketing say no last minute, like a month's work. But yeah, it's very hard to prove the ocean is wet unless you get people to put a toe in it first. And it's very simple to get started. 1 to 10 instances of Jira is free, and that's often how these things grow bottom up rather than top down. You'll have some 70-year-old CTO who quite likes his tools. You can get the team working on a small instance, and this is what we found. Like if people are starting to share a report, everyone else sees that. And they're like, oh, that's pretty. How do I make that in Jira? Okay, so I think starting small and improving return on investment iteratively is massively more beneficial than
Now
going
you're
for this
going
big.
agile.
Of course, going for this big waterfall, writing a case study, getting everyone involved, studying all the options and outputs. Just get started small, and ROI kind of starts proving itself, and those teams will start outperforming the teams on the old software. I mean, if anyone's ever been on an email chain, 30 emails long with 20 people CC'd, I just love replying all and saying, guys, I think this email chain cost us more than the thing we're debating. So it's that. I think with KPIs, there's something very important and careful to say. So in answer to your question, what's a good KPI to track in JSM? Time to resolution, close ticket.
Yeah.
Now, my answer was better than hers, because it was quicker. My time to resolution was shorter, winning. But if you've ever dealt with a support team that are just trying to close your ticket as quickly as possible,
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
but even if the answer is, oh, we don't do that, close ticket, you're like, what? So I think it's much more important to track customer satisfaction. Because time to resolution, I understand why businesses track it, but it cannot be the guiding star, right? It must be a secondary one. Because it's like measuring story points with software development. How big is a piece of string? Some things just take longer to resolve. But if you're asking something, oh, it's in the FAQ, done, versus you're asking something, oh, that's a feature,
Yeah.
right? Like, which is, we love that feedback, thank you.
Absolutely.
It's gonna take us 6 months.
Yeah, right. So before we go on to Manas, I really want to, share key takeaways for me from here. And then once Manas will be done, I would want to hear from you all as well. So we'll come back, to the panel. But let's go back to the audience. So before we go back to the audience and Manas, I think if someone has to build a case, and I think which is the major struggle every time you sell a new product which you see value in, because you were into a certain meetup and some amazing people told you, what has worked for them, starting from the Trundle story to, going on here. So you will be able to tell them that this is the cost you will be saving by reducing workforce that is engaged, by also showcasing some of the proven, case studies from Atlassian on how much time in general it takes to close a ticket of this or that scenario. It will also provide you reports which will not be manual and automatically generated. It will also tell you different categories of report ranging from leadership, management, teams and individuals. It will also, be able to showcase everything on a single dashboard, which means you will not have to run from one team to another asking, what they are doing. It will also tell you how you can, set privacy, how you can change your distribution list and it's not a long thread of people CC'd in. It can also tell you, how you can easily migrate your previous data and report and, and then, move from one environment to another, how you can keep your clusters separate depending on business unit and yet have similar reports. So I think this sort of case study, if you, produce to your leadership or management, and of course, the licensing is so straightforward. So it will be very easy for you to sell it to your leadership in case you are thinking. And so now, Manas, if we have missed anything and you want to add anything to the top,
Yeah. Thank you. I think I definitely agree with Chris on the part that stuff like MTTR and time to first response, I think we have all been there, right? Where the time to first response is a metric that the team is tracking. So the first response is, thank you, we are looking into it. And that's not what the user is really looking for, right? So customer satisfaction is a key metric that you should be tracking post-deployment for sure. One other thing that I would mention is that I have seen some IT teams track customer satisfaction in like a quarterly/half-yearly survey. That's not how you track it. Ideally you should be tracking it for every ticket and then aggregating it. So that's one of the things that I would definitely want to mention. One of the things that needs to be mentioned before deployment is, and now I have seen some larger deployments do it. I don't know how feasible it might be for like a smaller deployment, but there are softwares out there through which you can analyze your emails, analyze the tickets that you are getting in your current tool for service management, try to categorize them in terms of how many are simple requests of getting help. For example, hey, what's the Wi-Fi password? My VPN is not working. I need, and then the other category could be software access request. I need access to Microsoft Office. I need access to XYZ. The other category could be critical incidents like my laptop stopped working or blah blah blah. And then assign some sort of a time value for each of these categories. So, for example, for a software request, usually an agent takes about 15 minutes to grant it, and the user has to wait about 6 hours because probably the agent starts working on the ticket only when it gets assigned to them. So for an employee, 6 hours are lost. For an agent, 15 minutes are lost, and you can get to like a calculation of sorts that this is the net amount of employee hours, this is the net amount of agent hours that you can save if you deploy this service management tool with these automations in place and with these plugins in place. Again, this takes a lot of effort, but for larger deployments, it's all worth the effort because when the contract values run into millions of dollars, it's all very helpful to get into this level of depth.
Perfect, awesome. So no stone unturned. So now we go to the audience. I want to hear from you. What is it that you can do to further build the case? What is it that they are missing? And then we open to the questions. So if we can pass on the mics and the Jeep, that would really help so that audience can then pass on to each other. So we first go to Dheeraj because he didn't volunteer. And then anyone who is not volunteering, Dheeraj just pass on the mic. So he gets the mic. So what is it, Dheeraj, you think is missing, or it's not about missing, there is a lot to share. So you think companies struggle with, and that's why they need a smooth ITSM system. We can actually start with problem, and then problem statement would help us in building cases. So if we want to have a smooth ITSM in place, what are the challenges will be addressed that you can promise in your projection?
Okay, thank you so much, Deepthi, first off. And I was actually going to raise my hand, but you put me on the spot. Anyways. So, thank you to the panel for sharing your thoughts on this. A quick intro about myself. I am a service management consultant and I'm a ServiceNow architect. So, what I've seen, these days happening is ITSM is like, we used to talk about ITSM 10 years back. Like Diksha rightly mentioned, it's like service management using information technology tools. That's pretty much about it. Incident, problem, change. We all know that, right? But I think now we have moved way forward. Now the industry challenge or marketing challenge is not about how do I quickly, address the problem. So to me, MTTR is no longer valid, honestly. I don't care about it because I know my virtual bots are going to take care of it. So it's a matter of nanoseconds, doesn't matter, right? What different customers are using, or different people in the same organization, people from different verticals are using it. So how do we actually take care of the access controls in that particular sense? And second important thing I want to ask is, how do we basically do the discovery? Because when we talk about this service management or whatever, like Manas mentioned, between I think 120 to 250 you said, you need to automate these things. So how do you go about discovery, particularly for this SAM, HAM and all these different pieces, because it's not just about keeping an inventory of keyboards or mouse. It's more about application components and with of course these cloud solutions in place these days with all these different integrations that exist today. How do we basically do that in application per se? And I'm sorry, maybe I jumbled up all these things. But quickly, if I have to sell this to my management or to, let's say, any prospective customer, maybe probably I will not talk about resolution time and all that, because, like I said, that's the thing of past, right? What I would want to pitch in is for, okay, this is something wherein not just, I'm not going to offer you the automation, how you respond. I'm actually going to give you ability to predict what's coming your way. You should be able to know, what is going to be, in place or coming your way, let's say, after 15 days, so that you can keep some budget aside, you can keep your teams handy, and you can quickly mobilize all these things. And I think this is the challenge, which is my, understanding these days, people, industries see, and if anyone can come up with some better solution on this, then certainly
They have
that's
to.
going to be hard.
Today, no matter what, they'll stay back and find a solution.
So, and
Yeah.
Please don't have a fourth part to your question. Connect it all together. We can answer any more later. But. So starting off, permission schemes and data security, it's a very good one. Out of the box, Jira has a permission scheme system. It's a little bit clunky, it takes a little bit of expertise. I think my mic's a little bit loud, thank you. So yeah, it does require some help, especially if you've got getting contractors in and then people leave. It can become a part-time job just managing permission schemes. So there are some third-party add-ons, plugins, not that I sell, but I still recommend them. That I'd recommend for that. The default position should be obviously security first. So it's very easy to set up. For starters, data is only available to those that you've already given access to the Jira for. And in some cases, it's even good to have separate instances for separate things, so that it's very clear. Because it's very hard to train a large workforce. Don't put this data in this field because everyone can see it. So I've seen some companies intentionally firewall using different instances for different purposes, and they have an instance just for the more sensitive, like HR Jira instance, which will have people's payroll on and other stuff. But permission schemes can be tricky, and I think the best way to set it up is, security first. We work with giving people the options to externally share their data in reports. And so what we do is we just tie it to the Jira permission scheme. So what does the field say? When you share that report, people will only see the data they're meant to have access to. But it does require a bit of work. And probably, if I'm honest, either a contractor or a solution partner to help set up properly. If you're going to start putting sensitive data in Jira, it's worth getting right. That was part 0.5 of your question.
I think you answered what was it, asked you. So maybe,
because the question was, had a depth to it, I'll probably go into a bit more depth in how JSM works. I think there's this concept in JSM of users which are external and internal. So stuff like customers are external customers, or what we call portal-only customers. Permission schemes and stuff like that usually apply to internal customers. So you can go as deep as you want in terms of who has what access, and that can be a bit tricky, as Chris was saying. But because of this concept of portal-only / external customers, we offer a very easy way for saying that this person is an employee. I don't want to worry about whether he has some role or whether he has some permission, he or she has some permission due to which they might be able to access a report that they should not. You can just tell them that this person is a portal-only customer, does not have any access at all to the agent view at any point of time, right? So that's one layer of security that we offer. The other is what Chris mentioned, which is the separate instance kind of a scenario, which is in an Atlassian world. Since you mentioned ServiceNow, I'm just trying to draw references, right? In an Atlassian world, you have an organization. An organization can have multiple sites. Each site can have a product. So if you want to have complete isolation, for example, in an HR scenario or a legal scenario, you can have a site that is dedicated to HR and that JSM instance is completely isolated. It does not touch the users, groups, permission schemes, customers that might be on the IT side, or that might be on like a volunteer hub site that you might have for for your contractors or somebody, right? So that's like another layer of permission that you can add in terms of security for your instance, right? Then there's obviously all of the usual stuff, right? We have BYOK coming up, which is like you can get your own keys for encryption. We have SSO that's coming up for the portal, so you can have SSO set up. I think we support SAML already. There's SCIM that's on the roadmap, so you have all of those usual stuff. The other thing is, I think that was like since you touched upon asset management as well, we recently announced the acquisition for a company called AirTrack. It's based out of Melbourne, and from what I understood, AirTrack helps you do completeness of asset management and also quality of asset management. So it makes sure that you have tracked everything, and then also the fact that that data is up to date and it's does not have, because that has been like a problem with CMDB all along, that you put data into it through discovery probes, through device 42 or something like that, but then it's never really complete, right? So here trying to help to solve some of those problems. Do you want to add on to it, Diksha?
I wanted to cover the predictive piece, because that is something that we are looking at. It won't be solved in an instance, because it has to be right if we have to predict some sort of a problem that's coming up. And we are sort of doing and working on these requirements to understand how, for example, if there's an incident, we give some sort of similar incidents that have occurred in the past that have a very strong algorithm analyzing, like, let's say, the severity of the incident, what was the post-incident resolution data that was shared, how closely tied is the current incident with some X number of similar incidents that have occurred in the past, that can sort of help in understanding how to resolve this incident quickly. And at the same time, coming to like alerts, if I give an example, tying that whole chain of alerts that have occurred in the past from a single source, and what should be the call of action for this alert if some X number of alerts have occurred. Maybe there's just information, maybe there is something actually wrong in the server that needs to be done. So it's not a thing that will get solved quickly, because it involves a lot of prediction, a lot of algorithms, figuring out the right set of data that you would want to include. Is it the description of the incident? Is it parameters like the priority? Who are the responders? What are the affected services included as part of the incident? So that's the next big step that you're talking about, because we have sort of covered a lot of things in JSM with respect to getting the configuration, getting the setup, but what next? How do we solve for when can I expect the next incident? How can I not even expect that incident to show up for the responders and have it solved with whatever data we have in the system already, and get the right people in the loop?
So this is more in line of exploring beyond problem management. What you
Keep
just
your
mentioned.
mic closer to you, otherwise it will not get into the recording properly. Everyone, yeah.
I don't think it's working.
And so before we want to proceed, the lunch is ready and we have to do a group photo, but there are many more questions to come. So if you have questions, it will be really great if you can raise your hand, so we know how many rounds we have for the question. Yeah.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I know you're just checking up on time. We do 10-12 minutes of questions more,
Yes.
then we'll break for lunch.
Yeah.
That means that you can continue having these guys over lunch as well,
Yes.
with questions that you have.
Yeah.
The reason I'm saying this out loud is just the universe being happy to us. The moment we were talking about the socks being stuck in customs, the UPS guy came to our house and delivered. And Meghna actually worked with somebody and Ubered it here. So we've got those socks here now that Atlassian was supposed to send us. It's just the universe is crazy, right?
The highlight of the panel, the socks have arrived.
And the other thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot while I was speaking about Sony case is we actually have a raffle of a Sony headphones. Tacky, I know. But what we'll do is, we'll do a raffle right after this. If you've not registered, please register, because that's the list we'll check for raffle. We'll do the raffle for Sony headphones, and I gave Chris one of his own swag items that I got from Teams 23, which is a very custom specific deck of cards from Wall Street Solutions. So we'll do raffle for these two items the moment we end with the Q&A. So please don't go before the raffle, and of course the lunch will start in 10-12 minutes.
And my group photo.
Before lunch, group photo will have to take.
Alright, so quickly tying together the last few things. I think analytics, AI, predictability, algorithms are all brilliant, but we all know big data is a lie, right? Very often, because it's only as good as the data you put into it, trash in, trash out. And if you don't have a bunch of people working with the tools, they're not putting the data in. And so much of the power of the organizations we work with is the people, right? Like automation should enable that and improve on it and accelerate it. And so what you want to do is crowdsource that data. And one of the best ways I found to do that is have very simple to use tools. Yeah, so this is the problem with a lot of the older legacy tools we're used to using. Very complicated, very hard. If you installed an app on your phone and then it said, oh sorry, you have to go on a 2-week training course before you can use this app, the first thing you would do is uninstall it. In business software, we still have a long way to go, but I think the joy of things like Jira, JSM, and any add-on you look at, very often technical people get stuck in feature comparison. Which app has the most features? Fine, but if I can only use 10% of those features without going on a 2-week training course, which I don't have time to do, not useful. So if you want that predictive analytics and you want the algorithm, the AI to work, it needs to be crowdsourcing data from all those customer contact points.
The same, and that was a short and small pitch for the class. If you're still not convinced, let's talk about that.
So I think if there is no burning question, is there one? Are you on fire? You're burning? Perfect. So then I think let's come for the group photo. And before that, we thank our awesome panelists for their patience and cooperation.
And our wonderful moderators.
Thank you. So let's come for the photo, and then we push on for lunch, and which is just